Fear and Hunger is a game about otherworldly horrors, such as ancient gods and supernatural beings. However, another side of what makes the setting of Fear and Hunger so scary is how humans are capable of just as much evil and can be equally terrifying, but in their own way. One example of how dark humans can get is Father Hugo in Fear and Hunger 2, whose reign of terror over the orphanage in Prehevil will keep you up at night. In this video, I will explore the lore of this villain and the dark secret that he is hiding. But before we get on with this video, I'd appreciate a like and sub. It goes a long way considering this is a very small channel, so if you want to see more lore about the game of Fear and Hunger, please drop a like and subscribe. The setting of Fear and Hunger 2 centers on the town of Prehevil, at the time of the end of the Great War between the Bremen Empire and the Eastern Union in the 1940s. This setting is basically an analogue of post-World War II Europe. As such, the world of Fear and Hunger reflects the bloodshed and immense human cost that has been caused by the war. Since many died in the Great War, this caused a large amount of orphans to go without homes, and for this reason, the orphanage in Prehevil comes to quote-unquote help these children. In the game, stepping foot into the orphanage, you realize that something is quite obviously wrong. Just like most of the other areas of the town, stepping foot into the orphanage immediately gives a creepy vibe. Upon entering, you are greeted by a portrait of Father Domek, who presides over the main religion of Prehevil, the worship of Ulmer, and acts as the dark priest for Prehevil. Father Domek is the main sponsor of the orphanage, however he gave the day-to-day running of the orphanage to Father Hugo, who acts as the headmaster. However, this rule is not a benevolent one. In Prehevil, there are quite a few rumors about dark things happening in the orphanage, with locals murmuring about how various children actually go missing without a trace in the orphanage. Furthermore, there is even a more wild rumor about how Father Hugo is a vampire that bathes in blood. Now these rumors sounds a bit too outlandish to be true, but is there any truth to these rumors? As the player travels throughout the orphanage, you get to see that the environment is very austere, despite it being a place for children. Where are the paintings? Where are the toys? Or anything that kids would actually like? Something noteworthy is that outside of the orphanage, in the front yard, there is playground equipment, yet only outside. When you step inside, there is no such luxuries. This would suggest that effort was made to keep up appearances of the orphanage to look friendlier to the outside society, but inside, it's just desks, chalkboards and beds. This detail would suggest that Father Domek and Father Hugo care more about appearing to be good rather than actually being good. When you examine notes of the orphanage, it corroborates this theory of the orphanage being devoid of fun, which details how the orphans spend most of their day with chores, class and little to do with any play. This orphanage is basically a factory for soldiers. Walking around the orphanage, you will encounter fallen cherubs, presumably the moon-scorched forms of the orphans, which is disturbing to say the least. However, there are also ghosts that you encounter, named shadowy figures that will attack your mind. The moon-scorched enemies of this area are understandable, as the entirety of Prehevil is essentially moon-scorched. However, the ghosts are curious. Ghosts in most mythologies are vengeful spirits, those who were killed in cold blood, whose spirits still haunt the earth trying to seek revenge. To have ghosts haunt the orphanage suggests that something very foul indeed has occurred. As the player walks throughout the orphanage, he or she can fall through the floorboards and fall down into the basement of the orphanage. It's in the basement that you truly get to see how dark this orphanage is. As you try to find your way back up, you can see a moon-scorched dark priest. What is he doing down here? After dispatching the dark priest, you notice that something is off. Why are there chains attached to the walls in the basements? As the player explores more of the basement, various implements such as bone saws and other equipment that really shouldn't be down here are here. The floor has traces of blood and there are various baths in the basement. Could the rumors of Father Hugo bathing in blood actually be true? In the basement there is also a ritual circle to give an offering to the Tainted One, who accepts the heads of humans. This strongly implies that there were sacrifices taking place down here. The basement is basically a sacrificial chamber. Traversing through the upper floor of the orphanage, you make it to the office of Father Hugo. However, something is really off. Just as you're about to enter, you get to see that there is a sigil of Grogoroth and Sylvian outside of his room. Why are these sigils here? And why Grogoroth and Sylvian? Grogoroth is the god of destruction, and to gain affinity with him demands sacrifice, mainly of human life. And Sylvian? Well, Sylvian is the god of love and fertility. To put it bluntly, Sylvian is the god of sex. Now, why would Father Hugo have a sigil of Sylvian outside of his room? Well, in this context, given everything we've seen so far, I don't think I need to spell it out. As a side note, this is actually what makes the storytelling of Fear and Hunger so good and immersive. You learn about the story through paying attention to the detail of the environment, rather than just an NPC just flat out telling you this is happening and that is happening. It rewards players for paying attention and gives you extra detail to the story that you otherwise wouldn't have gotten. It's clear that Father Hugo's rule of the orphanage is just a front for his depravity. The sad reality of how evil looks like in the real world with real humans isn't someone that is possessed with a demon or a ghost, but someone who has power over others and abuses that power. This is what evil actually looks like. Heading into Father Hugo's room, you get to meet the man himself. You see him standing and facing the door with his arms out in silence, just smirking at you. As you approach him, combat begins. In the fight against him, he will cast Grogoroth spells such as Hurting, and is quite challenging to fight for those who are unprepared. Halfway through the fight, you see Father Hugo take off his clothes for seemingly no reason. Perhaps this is something he does often to intimidate people, because it's kind of a strange compulsion. The fight is quite tough and he casts various pyromancy spells, and you'll be lucky to escape this fight without some of your limbs being lost. If the player manages to defeat him, killing him gives access to a key where you can open the rest of the doors to the orphanage. You can even find journals that detail his manifesto about his beliefs. To paraphrase, he believes that the old gods are the supreme power, and his disdain for the concept of new gods is an affront to this power. With the headmaster's key in hand, you can then unlock various rooms and even unlock the courtyard. Stepping foot into the courtyard, you see gallows in the center. Why on earth would gallows be here? The obvious answer is to execute people, and perhaps this was used as a grim reminder to intimidate people to stay in line. Imagine going to class here and looking out the window and you see gallows in the courtyard. It's fair to say that would scare the hell out of anybody. Heading into a side room, you get to see a closet that has a rare symbol. Going into the realm of rare, you get to see what the orphanage is like on the other side. The orphanage is transformed into what looks like to be a front line of a war. There are various military equipment and trenches that you can traverse, as well as corpses littering the area, as well as Ronteels that will attack you and try to take off your limbs. I think the rare dimension version of the orphanage being a front line of a war is actually quite telling to the psyche of this place. Considering the pipeline between war and orphanages, where wars make orphans and then orphans are sent to war, the fact that this area would be presented in such a way I don't think is a coincidence. Levi is a prime example of this, as a character who actually grew up in the Prehevil orphanage, who recounts how bad it was growing up there, only for him to be sent out to the Great War and to experience a different kind of trauma. One of the interesting theories about the realm of rare, such as this zone here, is that it's actually a collective unconscious, where what's in the mind of the people actually reflects into the realm of rare and basically constructs the area. So it's fair to say that war was on the mind of the orphans in this place, and for good reason. And if you want to find out more about Rare, you can do so by watching the lore video I made about him on the screen here.